know about you, but I'm typically most productive when I'm supposed to be doing something else. In this case, I was supposed to be working on the build review series, but I got a little bit distracted. One of our specialists here on Cubed, DJ Ryder, was asking for a plot in Monstera to build something. So I thought, alright, I'll set aside a couple minutes, I'll make an area for him to build, and put out some requirements. But as we were chatting and figuring out what he wanted to build, I kinda got inspired myself. So we decided to do a collaboration, which is probably the first one that I've done in years. We decided to build a hotel and suites based on 100 Vandam Street in Manhattan. Now typically in a hotel and suites, the hotel is on the lower levels and the suites, also known as apartments or condos, are just on the upper levels. We also wanted to include a suite penthouse up at the very top for 2 floors with higher ceilings. So we had a conversation of what we wanted this thing to look like, and we settled on an old brick industrial building as the base that had been converted, with a white tower on top in stark contrast to the brick base. Now I know on this channel I do mention my degree in architectural engineering a lot, but what I don't say is the actual full name of the degree is Architectural Conservation and Sustainability Engineering. This means that I've actually learned a lot about the ethics of conserving buildings, how you conserve them properly, and if you want to make edits to them, how do you go about that in an ethical way? And one of the big ideas is that if you have an old building and you for some reason need to build something on top of it, you should preserve the character of the older building and separate the newer section so that it's very distinct and you're not trying to replicate it. So that's why in specifically New York and Toronto, you'll see a lot of older buildings with very modern ones attached to it, either on top, beside, or kind of around it. But the key element is to keep the 2 sections distinct between the time periods. The tower itself is going to be white with balconies. We chose to use these things called cantilevered balconies. In engineering terms, cantilever just means something that is only supported on one side. Up closer to the top near the penthouse, we decided to include some setbacks, first of all for visual interest, and second of all for daylight. Since we're building in the city of Andia in the neighborhood of Monstera, we're assuming that we're in the northern hemisphere, which means the sun is going to go across the south side of the sky. And in terms of having the setback on the top of the building on the north side, it doesn't really matter. But we figured if we're going to have it on the south side of the road, we should probably have it on the north as well, just for symmetry. The height of the brick section is also very specific. It's meant to line up with the other old brick building across the street. Urban planners typically do this in urban areas to keep a wall along the street. If we go a little bit further down the street in Monstera, you can see that it does drop down to a park, which isn't really conducive to what I'm trying to go for. So similar to Park Avenue in Manhattan, I'm going for an urban wall. Now at this point, it's time to start building. We started with a height scale with gray, green, and blue wool. The gray means the space between floors, the green means the floor and ceiling above, and blue means the parapets on top, which is typically something that I don't do, but I've started doing recently. Now in previous videos, I have mentioned a rule that I have actually broken multiple times, and that is the 2-block rule. The rule states that between each floor of a building, you should have 2 blocks, one for the ceiling above and one for the floor. But if we look at the scale that I've laid out, it seems that I'm contradicting myself. If we back up and look at the purpose of the 2-block rule, it's to make sure that you don't have the same block as your floor and ceiling. Now a trick that I've been using recently is you can use a full block for the floor, but instead of a full block for the ceiling, I've actually been using trapdoors. The benefit to this is that you can compress your building a little bit more and get more floors out of the same height. But the downside is you can't put furniture all the way up to the ceiling. It also makes overhead lights quite difficult, so you're going to have to figure out some other way to do it. Similar to 100 Vandam Street, we built the base using a brick and black combo, which is one of my favorites. You really can't go wrong with this. On the back of the building and the side, it is solid because it is going to be connected to another building. If you were building this building in somebody else's city, you would have to talk to them about which sides need to be connected to buildings and which sides you can have as an open facade. But in this case, I'm also the urban planner, so I can do whatever I want. DJ Ryder was able to come up with these fantastic windows. I absolutely love them. He did a great job. These are some of the more advanced features of CubedPack. I don't know how he did it, but I think it looks really cool. Afterwards, it was time for the tower massing. Massing just being the professional term for making the shape of the building. Similar to the real life reference, the idea was to have a main and smaller tower. As Ryder was working on the bottom section of the building, I started on the shear wall and put it at the back of the building for daylight, which is something I don't typically do. The shear wall acts as the structural spine of the tower, and typically you're going to put it in the middle. However, in this case, since the backside does not have any windows, I decided to put it up against it. When you're designing the layout of your structural systems within a skyscraper, you want to maximize your window space for the occupants. If you're in an elevator, you don't need to see the outside. I also implemented a structural grid column and emergency stairs, 2 of them, which you do need according to the Canadian Building Code. Afterwards, we outlined the floors according to our vertical scale, and then I went ahead and filled in the floors with wood and ceilings with upside down trapdoors. As I was doing this, I felt the western facade was a little bit too boring, so I added 2 outcrops to make it a little more interesting. We proceeded to add the balconies and this interesting wave pattern to spice it up a little bit. On the very top, we added these large parapets that was originally in blue in our scale. This is to keep the water and snow in so it doesn't fall off the side. On top, we added HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment, also known as the spinny metal stuff. We added the stair and elevator overruns, photovoltaics, also known as solar panels, up top. And whenever you're adding them, make sure to add them at the top so that your parapets don't block them. Otherwise, they're kind of useless. I also added this little crane for window washing that I stole from my other tower on the other block. At this point, it was pretty much done, so I added some trees and then a little area for the entrance with some greenery on top. Let me know what you guys think of this. I think it turned out all right. Obviously, there's still a lot of work that we could do. Maybe decorate the terraces, the balconies, add interior as well. We did section off a portion of the ground floor facing the main street for a fancy restaurant, but I'm curious if you guys have any recommendations on what we could add or change to this building as we continue to refine it. Let me know in the comments. That's all for this video. If you're curious about a degree in architectural engineering, the same degree I have, join my email list to be notified when my paid course comes out. Course, info session, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it'll tell you what you can expect in a degree in architectural engineering for most of my classes that I took, the difference between architecture, architectural engineering, and civil engineering, and there's a pretty big frequently asked questions section at the end. So join my email list in the description. I'll send you an email once it's ready. Thanks for watching. My name's Matt. You're watching Alpine.